Hey everyone, this is Kate from Moonflower Moments. Today I want to talk to y'all about how I have developed a daily draw system that really works well within my practice and also aligns to some of my core values. So with that being said, the working definition of a daily draw is essentially people pull 1 to 3 cards. It could be all tarot, all oracle, or a mixture of both systems. You could even add other systems in if you want. And a lot of times people will ask questions such as, what is the energy of the day? What can I focus on today? What can I do to make today the best day possible? But essentially, many of the questions that people ask on these daily draws are focused on the day-to-day, minute, mundane details. And I think that that is actually really powerful because it gives us an opportunity to take control of our lives on a very mundane basis, because I think that you shouldn't worry about making a year a good year. You should worry about having good days, and then good days lead to good weeks, and good weeks lead to good months. And I think that that is the exact power of what a daily draw system can do for us if it's done in a way that is manageable and digestible. So to start out with, I thought I would tell you about kind of my history with daily draws to bring you into the present moment and kind of what I hope to do in the future with them. So to start out with, I think for a while, I was one of those people that said that they didn't get a lot from daily draws. And I think that's because when I was pulling the cards, I was just so over enthusiastic about engaging with tarot that instead of pulling 1 to 3 cards and saying, what should I focus on today, I would pull 20 cards, and it would just be a normal Monday. Why do I need 20 cards? That's a lot of shit to focus on. That's way too much. And so I was overloading myself with messages. I think that there is definitely a such thing as reading too much. And I came to a point that because I was over enthusiastic, kind of like a golden retriever, I guess, that I kind of hit a point where I realized that my daily draw practice had to shift. That I could still ask questions that were focused in the day, because that is something that is aligned with my core values, to be present in that daily moment, but I had to work in a way to make it more manageable, and then also to be able to integrate the messages that were coming to me in a more meaningful capacity. And it just so happens that if you kind of put it out there in the universe, I think you begin to look for answers to the problems that you have. And so Kelly Baer in December of last year proposed the concept of Tarot Advent. And the basic idea is you take one deck, and every day leading up to Christmas, you would shuffle the deck and you would pull 3 cards, and then on Christmas Day you would actually have more cards. But basically the Advent calendar is the messages that you're getting every day. So your messages are a little treat for you leading up to Christmas. And what I really liked about this concept is that she was only using one deck. I think at the time that I stumbled across the video, I had purchased a lot of new decks and I was very overwhelmed, and I was missing those days where I had a smaller collection and I could bond with decks a little bit more deeply. So there was the appeal in that, but there was also the concept that she wasn't shuffling the cards back in. And so instantly I kind of saw an opportunity to work with this system in a way that made my life much more manageable, my tarot practice much more manageable. And I came across Marlena Teresa's video in which she adapted Kelly Baer's Tarot Advent Calendar. And essentially what Marlena Teresa did is she decided that she was going to participate in Kelly Baer's Advent Calendar, but she didn't want to, or she didn't have time to pull cards every single day. So essentially what she decided to do was get a whole bunch of envelopes, and she numbered the envelopes. And you can see I kind of adopted this system. Whoa, you can't see that because of the lighting. 21. That one says 20, 19, 22. So just in the corner of the envelopes, you have the day they're meant for. And on the first day of Advent Calendar, she pulled all of her cards and she just shuffled them into envelopes, so that when she woke up in the morning, she could open them with her daughter, and that could be a little treat, kind of popping out, the calendar of an actual Advent calendar. And I thought to myself, okay, Marlena, who's basing the system off of Lisa, I really like this idea, because essentially by forcing yourself to say, no, I'm only going to pull 2 to 3 cards and I'm going to stuff them in an envelope, and those are my cards, you can't bargain with your future. You can't bargain with your fate. You can't pull more cards because you don't like what the cards had to say. Like, that is your message and you're meant to receive it. And there's something really beautiful about that ritual that makes it very special and intentional. And I think that that's what my practice was missing, was that intentionality. Yeah, I was pulling cards every day, but I wasn't pulling them with the weight and the intention that I think tarot deserves. And so I decided to start doing the same thing. I did it with Marlena during Tarot Advent, and then for the last 6 months, it's what I've been doing. On the first of the month, I sit down and I pull from one tarot deck and I pull from one oracle deck, and whatever cards I get, I stuff into envelopes, and then I open them up the night before, or like the day before, so that I can kind of sleep on the message, and then I integrate that message throughout the day. So it seems pretty simple, but like for me, in its simplicity, it's very powerful. So along the way, I kind of learned what kind of decks I do like to work with within this practice and the decks that I don't like to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera face down now and give you kind of a look of like the nuts and bolts, because the basic premise is, you know, an envelope, a tarot, and an oracle. And you don't even have to have an oracle if you don't want. You don't even have to have a tarot if you don't want. It's very simple. But I have learned that there are some decks for me personally that are better suited for this practice than others. So I'm going to go ahead and share those with y'all now. So when I first started reading with the daily envelopes, I didn't really quite understand that, like what I was doing it for. I didn't really have a purpose yet. I knew that I wanted to, you know, kind of stick to the same question of like, what can I focus on? Because I wanted something that was daily driven. But I didn't really know how to harness the system in a way that was most powerful for me. So I decided that I would pull Tarot Arthurian and I would pull Faceted Garden. And I pulled Faceted Garden simply because it looks good with Tarot Arthurian. That's really the only rationale that I had behind it. But I thought to myself that Tarot Arthurian was a newer deck in my collection. It's one that I haven't been able to use. And I said to myself, I'm going to study this deck using the daily envelope system. So that way I'm studying like 2 to 3 cards at once. So it's not a lot, but it's keeping everything in kind of manageable chunks. And so I quickly learned, because Tarot Arthurian especially has a guidebook that you have to translate, that was not going to work for me. I did not want to spend time on Google translating cards. Like I just didn't want to do that. And quite frankly, I didn't want to read three guidebook entries. You know, I just didn't want to. That's not what I wanted. I was being overloaded with messages. And so I learned pretty quickly that this system did not work for me. That even though potentially I could see the daily envelopes as being a really good vessel of a deck study, it was just not what was interesting to me. Now, I do know that Tarot Magpie for their daily draws does do a deck study, so I'll leave a link in the description box below to a video in which they describe that, because like I said, I think that it had potential, or it has potential, especially the way Tarot Magpie does it, but the way I was doing it, it wasn't for me. So from these, I learned primarily, you know, I need something that's a little bit more accessible. And like easier to get down with like quick and dirty readings, I think. So once I realized that, I said, okay, I think I want to have artwork that is simplified. And I started working with Radiant Wilds. I think that was my March deck. And then my February deck was the Gentle Tarot. So both of these decks have simplified artwork. They do have guidebooks that are really strong, and I'm going to show those to you in a second, because that's what another lesson that I learned, is that the guidebooks do matter. But for the most part, like, these are very accessible, because when I'm looking at the artwork, unlike Tarot Arthurian, where I wasn't quite sure what the artwork was nodding to, because it was set like in a whole world, in a whole realm, you know, it was the Arthurian tarot, so we had legends behind it. This is just nice and simple and sweet. It's beautiful artwork. It's set in one particular location, with Radiant Wilds being a desertscape and the Gentle Tarot being like Alaska. And so the world was a little bit more limited, and in a way that made it much more narrow focused for me engaging within a daily draw practice. So I kind of learned, hey, I really want the artwork to be simple. Another thing that I kind of stumbled upon while working with this is that I also value decks that have guidebooks that are very specifically written. And I think that it was Radiant Wilds that taught me this first, and then I'll show you the Gentle Tarot. So let me go ahead and pull the first card that's on top is the Sun. So we can go look at that entry. So the way that I pull these cards is I do open up the envelopes the night before, if I didn't already say that already, just to give me an opportunity kind of to simmer and think about the message, to think about ways that I'm going to integrate this energy on the next day. Because if I'm saying what should I focus on, I don't want to just be passively focusing by like looking and like noticing the sun. Like I actually actively want to be doing something. I want to be actively living my life. And that's what the draw of this guidebook is. So let me get to the Sun. Here we go. So I'll go ahead and leave it right there. You can pause it if you want to read it. So it states up top, an affirmation, my world is illuminated. And I learned pretty quickly, like, hey, I really like affirmations in my guidebooks for my daily draws, because if I'm having a really rough day, I can always go back to that simple phrase and repeat it and get power from it. Affirmations are meant to be empowering. I think our daily draw practice is meant to be empowering. So by saying this phrase, my world is illuminated, I can look at the ways the world is illuminated, but also actively illuminate it myself. So we have direction, legend, which is just a general write-up, light, which is essentially the card meeting in its light form, and then shadow, which is its reversal. But what I love the most about this guidebook, which has spoiled me and ruined all other guidebooks basically for me, is this radiance tip. Spend some time in the sunshine. So when I was working with this deck, it all of a sudden clicked. Oh no, this is what I've been looking for in my daily draw, is I want direction. I know what the sun means. And so it doesn't do anything for me when I pull it and I say, what should I focus on? Oh, the sun, we have like, you know, self-actualization and radiance, and we have everything is going good and you're basking in your glory. Like, I know what the card means, right? But what should I actually do today? And when I started shifting my daily draw practice to that, that's when everything started unlocking, because I said to myself, I can use tarot as a method to live actively, which is what I always want to do. So the Gentle Tarot, to a certain extent, does this too. So we'll go ahead and look at the Nine of Thunder, which in this deck is the Nine of Swords. So we have this beautiful affirmation for the Nine of Thunder. I invite patience and love into my being, and I approach my pain with curiosity. This is such a sweet, affirming affirmation. So that's the thing about daily draws too, is it's like, fuck, at some point you are gonna grab the Tower, especially if you're not shuffling the cards back in, right? Like if you hit the 28th day in the month and the 28th day of the month is really meant to be a 10 of Swords, but you already got the 10 of Swords on the 15th of the month, well, the deck is going to give you the Tower, and you're going to be like, oh, fuck, I don't want the Tower, right? But when we have like this nice affirmation listed, it really helps you to say to yourself, wait, okay, hold up, these heavier cards, I can kind of manage that energy. It helps you on those more difficult days. So we have the affirmation, but then when we get into the card meaning itself, especially right here with the upright, you can go ahead and pause if you want to read it. It says here, if you are struggling with repetitive negative thoughts or deep bouts of worry, take a moment to gauge the situation. Has this experience recently started, or is it a pattern you carry? When is it most likely to happen? What are the thoughts that keep coming up? Write them down. So it literally tells us, write down the thoughts that are keeping us in that negative pattern. And then once we realize that our pattern is due to our physical state, we can better organize our energy and avoid getting so deep. So we need to process while we are awake. Yeah. So like literally telling me, write down my negative thoughts. Like, okay, I can engage with the Nine of Swords energy in a way that allows me to have power again. And I think that's what that's all about. So those two decks are really the best for my practice. And I've used both of them, I think, twice. Another deck that I recently started using, and it works relatively well, but not as strongly as the other two, is going to be the Herb Crafter's Tarot. So I'll just show some of the cards. The beauty about the Herb Crafter's Tarot is that even though the artwork is pretty detailed compared to the other two decks that I just showed you, there's only one plant per card. And so if I happen to pull a card for that day that just has like one plant, right? If I pull like one card, it's gonna have one plant. The chance of me having that plant in my garden is actually pretty high. So it does encourage me to live actively in the way that I want, because let's say, for example, I pull, let me get to one that I actually have. bee balm. I have bee balm in my yard. So if I pull this in the morning, it could be a deliberate attempt and a reminder, like go and like look at your bee balm. Like, how's it doing? Assess its health. Does it need more water? Is it in the correct sunlight? What can you make with the bee balm? And that's when my brain starts getting really happy with the guidebook for the herb crafters. So if I open up the guidebook for bee balm, let me try to work this to where you can't have the shadows. You can pause it if you want to read it. We have up here 3 different ways that we can engage with the energy: harness the power of desire, embrace creativity with confidence, courageously step towards the heat. So this isn't as quite as direct as the other 2, but like I can work with that. Courageously step towards the heat. That means that I could perhaps like spice up my cooking with a little bit more spice, right? Embrace creativity with confidence. It means that I can speak clearly when I'm trying to explain my creative ideas with my best friend. So it has these 3 things. It has a guidebook which describes the description of the artwork as well as like what does the card mean. But then it also has down here the crafting, right? So the first one is save the bees, grow bee balm. So if I were to receive this on a daily draw and see this, I'd be like, check, I already have done that. But the next thing is attract what you desire by wearing bright colors inspired by bee balm flowers. This is just perfect. So not every card has something that is like this successful in this street, but most of the cards in Herb Crafters Tarot do. So it's like, yeah, I definitely want to work with this plant. I want to actively create. That's what I want to do in my life. So my daily draw practice should invest in that and should reflect that. So I actually have a dear friend of mine, and I'd love to get her on my channel for a podcast. So if she's listening, we need to get on it. But she pulls her daily draws, and then because she loves fashion and she loves perfume, she actually will ask herself, okay, what does a 3 of Swords outfit look like? So she pulled 3 of Swords yesterday, and her outfit was like very clean, very professional. It was very like well kept, because in her mind, she wanted something that was like a nice clean image while she was sitting in that 3 of Swords. She is a therapist, so sitting in that 3 of Swords energy of those around her, something that was kind of like a blank slate that wouldn't absorb the energy of everything around, but also wouldn't be like disorienting for both her and her clients. And so I find that to be really cool. It definitely reminds me of that. So it's another way to engage with the energy of the cards. So those are my favorite decks so far for engaging with energy in like a very direct capacity. Now I do want to try other tarot decks, even ones that don't have guidebooks that are that direct. I do know that there is a guidebook called Tarot Toolkit. It's not a guidebook, it's just a tarot book called Tarot Toolkit, and it has suggested activities for all of the cards. So if you, for example, pull like 2 of Pentacles, if you go to the guidebook entry in that book, it'll have like 3 different activities that you could do to embrace that energy that day. I did have that book. I gave it to a friend, but that is something that I'm thinking about kind of getting back, because I do want to work with other decks too that perhaps don't have that set in the guidebook already, but could easily be bent to work with that system if I had like a supplemental material. So I thought to myself, I don't have Tarot Toolkit. I lent it to a friend, so I don't really want to buy another copy. But I do have an oracle deck that is very directive in nature, and this is Wild Whispers, and this is from the creator of Radiant Wilds. So I just wanted to show you this because I'm thinking to myself, okay, let's say for example, I want to work with Tarot Arthurian again, or I want to work with Tarot of Curious Creatures, decks that are perfectly good decks but don't have directives in their guidebook. Like, what can I do? Well, I can go to an oracle that does have that. So in the case of Wild Whispers, let's go ahead and look at number 2, which would be grounding. Here we go. So it has like a whisper, which is just like a small message of it. Introspection, so these are questions that you need to consider and journal on. You also have elements, which are keywords with grounding. So grounding would be connection, support, chrysote, I don't know how to say that, soul, earth, trees, growth, and soil, so other words that are similar. But then it also has embodiment. So for the image grounding, we have lie on the earth, or run your hands over a rock, or anything natural. It also has for practice, create an earth altar. So there's multiple things that you can do in just within this one guidebook entry. It also has a little bit of poetry here too, if you want to read some poetry and reflect on that. But I like that it's, once again, practice-based. So this oracle is kind of going to allow me to open it up to where I can engage with other tarot decks as well. So with that being said, so far everything I've said is like, I want the tarot to kind of tell me a directive because I want to practice that energy instead of just sit in it. But I also definitely want to make sure that my daily draw doesn't become too limited. So one of the decks that I started mixing in to make sure that my daily draw wasn't too limited was this one. And this is the Divining Poets, the Lucille Clifton edition. And this features poetry from Lucille Clifton. So I really love this because, once again, I pull the daily envelope at night in preparation for the next day. I don't want to spend a lot of time visually analyzing. I don't want to have to get to a guidebook. Like, just give me my message, because I've probably already like brushed my teeth, taken my bath, like showered. Like, I know that kind of sounds crass, but sometimes like we are better suited for kind of like quick and dirty messages that hit really hard than methodical ones. And especially for a daily draw practice, I want a small phrase that I can carry with me to bed that night and to think of the next day. But I don't want it to be so detailed that it's like restricting me. So this is my way of like, when I feel like the tarot is becoming too restrictive and it says, you know, go outside in the sunshine, I'm like, well, what else? Like that's like too specific. Like give me another layer. This deck is how I add that layer into it. And because I've been working with this deck in my daily envelopes for 5 months straight, that also means that this deck is starting to take on different meanings for me. So for example, this right here, I have pulled this card multiple times on very, very special occasions in my life. I pulled this the night of graduation, the first night that I had really taken a massive leadership role in my life. I also pulled this on my senior's last day. I also pulled this on the day that my seniors gave a This I Believe speech, where they came in front of the classroom and told everyone something that they believe, what their core value was, and how they got it. So this is a very specific message to me. So now when I pull it, I ask myself, oh my God, I have so many good days. Like I have a record of good days around this message. So with that being said, you know, what is it going to look like? Is it going to look like how it came to be in December? Is it going to look like what it looked like in April? Is it going to look like what it looked like in May? You know, and now it becomes fun because since I've used the same deck for so long, it kind of becomes a scavenger hunt of I'm looking for the energy of this in a way that is very expansive. So it is the perfect blend between that like direction that I want from the tarot and the expansiveness that I need to allow my intuition to flow in, but also to allow me to open up my eyes and look a little bit more presently at what's around me. So for example, Any Stone Can Sing, I love this. Oh, and then I also have the Star. Oh, fucking beautiful. I love that. So these two cards together, Any Stone Can Sting with the Star, what I'm thinking here is that in particular, this is in relation to resources for me, because there was a time I pulled this card that I was feeling very like frugal, and I ended up saving like $20 because I fixed something instead of buying something new. And so I'm not someone who considers themselves to be very crafty, to be very resourceful. So this is kind of a message of like, it's similar to the Ace of Pentacles to me in the sense of like, look at what's around you and use your resources wisely. And the Star is kind of a message of, you're finally at that point to where you're seeing that part of yourself and you're acknowledging it. So these two things, they go really well together. I just think they're beautiful. So I think that is it for now for everything I'm currently using. But I did just pick up another deck at Goodwill yesterday for $1.09. Like, hell yeah, I love that. And I think that I want to start incorporating this in. But like I said before, I've really kind of come to a point to where with my daily draws, like the simplest is the best, because it allows me to cherish the moment more presently. So I'm almost kind of afraid to add this layer in, but I'm going to give it a go next month and see how it feels. So on the subject of like liking the cards to be direction focused for daily draws, that's kind of the system that works best for me. I ended up getting this deck, which I mean, I picked up for very cheap, $1.09. It's $20 on Amazon. I'd never seen it before. And there's no pictures, there's no colors, it's literally just directions. So for example, let me pull to this one. Lower abdomen breathing. We tend to breathe with our lungs and chest. This way of breathing doesn't allow a full breath of air into our bodies though. Put your hand on your chest and breathe with your lungs. Now put your hand on your lower abdomen and breathe in your diaphragm. Notice the difference. Now breathe with your diaphragm for 8 minutes. If you feel any tightness, relax more deeply into each breath. So these are activities. I wouldn't want to pull this in every day because this seems a little bit more extensive, right? It's a little bit of an extra layer than just dress like the two of fire or go sit out in the sunshine. Like this is more directed. This is more labor intensive. So what I'm thinking about doing is pulling one of these cards like every 10 days. So shuffling this in on the first envelope of the month, the 10th envelope, the 20th envelope, and then the 30th envelope or whatever the last day of the month is. Because things such as make friends with a voice in your head, I mean, that's pretty labor intensive. Like I'd want like a week to do that. But it's another way to engage within this practice with like kind of a direction focused flair. So that's something that I'm going to be adding in pretty soon to my practice, and we're going to kind of go from there, you know. Hopefully this practice continues to evolve and change, but this is what it's looking like now for me. You know, something that is bite-sized, something that is manageable, something that allows me to live more presently. I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but like I think once you identify your core values, you kind of have to chase them relentlessly, and you should try to engage in activities that align with that in every area of your life. So this was my daily draws. I'm going to go ahead and leave links to the description box below down to the creators that I had mentioned, and the ones especially that do daily draws differently than I do, just so that you get a frame of reference that is like wide in range. And I really appreciate y'all being here, so I'll see y'all again next time.